So there probably is only one man in this field that doesn't need an introduction. He's right here. Lloyd Palaio, who has done our summations the last 2 years, who has been gracious enough to accept the invitation to do it again.
Thank you, Robert. And Robert assures me it's not because I haven't adequately finished the first two yet. This is going to be my third one here. And, joking aside, and also, in fact, I heard someone congratulate me out there. He was really looking forward to my talk because he knew whenever I reached the stage in this forum, it meant 15 more minutes to go. But I consider it a great privilege, not only because of the fantastic science that's brought together from so many different fields, but also because of the future importance that this group is likely to have as we continue to transform the care of diabetic eye disease. And I think this group stands a chance of really making an impact in ways that are similar to some of the other groups that I've been able to work with that have gone forward over the years to do that. Now, clearly the potential for transformative care is great, as we've heard from so many today. And we don't really have the time, so I can't go in detail, but we've heard science about AI algorithms for prediction, clearly something that's going to be critically important. Also, regulatory needs for evolution of the requirements, something that we have to get to, but which are currently based on our ever-aging, although very well characterized, current parameters. We've heard about early-stage drug discovery, the many promises of AI outside of just reading an image or predicting where someone may progress. We've heard new perimetry algorithms, drug discovery aspects, and even new innovative measures like potentially using gait in some of these ways. And something I didn't expect today, a new omics, which is getting hard to remember them all now, but the pathoconnectomics as well. So, of course, the science is exciting, but let us never forget the overarching needs of our ever-increasing millions of patients with diabetes that are found throughout the world. So the patient-oriented measures, the PROs and associated type things that you've heard so much about, are clearly going to be important. And yes, we've made amazing advances in the treatment of diabetic eye disease over the last 20 years. But if anyone had thought that most of the needs, or even many of the needs and fears and desires of our patients have been adequately and well enough addressed to diminish the need for such efforts, which I have heard from some industry, and I have heard more rarely from academia. If anybody thought that, then I think the poignant and courageous journey of Adriana should have fully dispelled that misperception. Furthermore, we need to remember that there are Adrianas in every corner of the globe with their own challenges and their own hurdles, but need our help just as much. So now, of course, progress is fundamental and is of fundamental importance to where we're going to go. So to highlight the summary of this, I'm going to do that by summarizing the summaries. The summary of the first MTM one was mostly about gathering input and concepts to help decide what to do and how to go about doing that. The summary for the second one was focusing the primary goals and initiatives so we could get something tangible out of this to get going. And now we have the summary for number 3, and this has been simply amazing progress, exceptional progress over this period of time. Not only are PSA out an 88+ million audience from that alone, but we have 2 detailed initial clinical trials all set, ready to go, with funding identified and collaboration with an outstanding group, the Diabetic Retinopathy Clinical Research Network, that will help assure successful completion of that. And regardless of what the outcomes are, we'll make sure that that gets distributed and respected among the community, and we learn all that we can. We've heard about the biorepository, a biorepository now that is functioning, has samples, and actually has ongoing analyses that can be done. And of course, the first consortium collaboration, showing the great insight and broad vision and dedicated commitment of BI. And that should be commended along with all the efforts that it took of all those involved to make that happen. So congratulations on that. That's amazing. Okay, and now for all of you other corporate entities out here, Okay, it's time to step up and start taking these initiatives now to the next level because the opportunity is great and we're actually starting to do things that are going to have outcomes. Now, the ever-increasing rate of progress here for the MTM Vision Initiative is, of course, highly suggestive that it's going to continue this way. And in a moment, Robert's going to discuss those next steps. But what I'd like to point out is what it's going to be like for the future summaries. If this type of progress continues, what summary number 5 and 6 and 7 are going to be and how remarkable that will be. And indeed, if this group has the staying initiative, similar to what we were fortunately able to see with Diabetic Retinopathy Clinical Research Network, which I helped initiate. Rick Ferris in this room was also one of the ones there from day one, and a select group there that has now continued to go on with that regard. If this group continues that way, which I think has every chance and ability to do, then at some point you'll be doing what the RCR is doing. You'll be having summary number 20, 21, and most recently 22. So it boggles the mind to think about what summary 22 might be like, but one thing I can be pretty sure of, I'm most likely not going to be doing it. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Robert with congratulations on pulling off another terrific meeting. Congratulations to Robert and to Jennifer Sun and Tom Gardner and all the group in the MTM that made that happen. My summary for that part is good job. So with that, Robert, tell us about the next steps.
Oh, thank you all. So I started the day talking about what we said last year and what we did this year. And so I want to try and set us up for future success with this listing of what our next steps look to be. So we've talked a lot about our roadmap. And Jenny gave a compelling presentation about our staging update and biomarker and endpoint validation, programs. So we are, in fact, as has been discussed, launching our first 2 clinical studies to look at novel endpoints of retinal structure and visual function, starting first quarter of 2025. We're in the contract phase of that. As I've talked about. We can't do everything in our own studies, but what we want to do is encourage our collaborators and other members of the community to take a look at the work that we've done, recognize that it's been done using an expert process to identify the promising basket of structural functional variables and start to adopt them in advance, to work in parallel with us so we can increase the N and prove more quickly the utility of these new functional variables. And we are going to complete, thanks to Theron, Jason Durr's team here at the University of Michigan, and support from BI and others, our new PRO, which will include items relevant to retinal neurodegeneration, visual function, as well as anxiety, depression, and distress. That should be completed next year. And then, of course, we want to, with the presentation of GATE, to start to really think about actually piloting the incorporation of patient-derived data, patient-acquired data, and aggregating it with PRO data to help us really validate some of the novel biomarkers. And in this regard, at least it's been in my experience that especially when you have a slow reduction in your visual acuity or visual function, you really don't necessarily recognize it. So you don't necessarily report it. You don't necessarily report it to your doctor. But if we can find a metric of functional vision like GATE that alters in the earliest stages of diabetic retinal diseases and diabetes effect on the retina, it's going to be extraordinary. So that's another one of our next steps, is to actually complete that pilot to looking at GATE, in diabetic retinal disease. The biorepository, Patrice and his team have done an extraordinary job. We have our first 50 samples, 100 eyes, where our intent is to build to 400 eye characterization over the next year, and of course finish our secure portal so that people can start to engage, get access to the data and the samples to do their own research. In terms of the data lake and the next steps, we talked a little bit about the data lake. Again, this is really all about establishing the infrastructure that can accept contributions of data from our collaborators, so we can actually have the database necessary to apply AI tools and other methodologies to advance the space and accelerate our progress. Of course, this requires, as Kerry Getz and others talked about in the AI big data session, we have to understand that in order to build these big data sets and make them useful, we have to start thinking about how are we going to map our data to common data models. And that, of course, is a priority, for us in everything that we're doing. In fact, the DRCR net is going to work with us in accommodating the clinical studies collection to map the data that's collected in the clinical studies to common data models. And of course, our intention is to start to support the development of AI models, for early detection and more effective risk stratification. From a standpoint of building collaborations, we talked about our consortium. We talked about our first member. We're going to build it out, add additional members, and secure additional founding members in order to advance the consortium activity. From a partnership development perspective, we are actively, as you might imagine, working with University of Michigan, working with the Joslin, working with other private, other means for interaction with private donors to support our vision efforts, because it's really going to take the philanthropic community, the academic community, the industry community, and others to develop the financial resources in order to achieve all the goals that we've set for ourselves. From the standpoint of community engagement, I would encourage you all to learn more about the work of the CCOI, the Collaborative Community for Ophthalmic Innovation. It's critical that we all kind of come together in another space. In particular, our interest is in the leadership of a workshop coming next year to look at endpoints in diabetic retinal disease and create a compelling argument for adoption of certain endpoints to be used in the regulatory pathways. We are going to continue, to engage the community in our patient-centered efforts. So we're actively reaching out to the patients and families who are personally affected to ask them to tell their stories. And one of the things that we hope to be able to do with support from our partners is to host a patient-focused drug development panel, which will add the patient voice to drug development efforts. And then finally, you've seen our first PSA. We're going to continue to build awareness about what we're doing and why it's important. And in particular, now that we have 2 clinical studies, being launched, to use our outreach to the community. And thank you, Dr. and Lady Glockenflecken, for offering to help us do this, to start to recruit patients for participation in these trials. So last year, I said this is the same statement as last year. This is really about our gratitude to all of you for participating in all the work that you do. It is really about restoring and preserving the joy of people with diabetes and people with diabetic retinal disease, and preserving and restoring vision. This is a picture from the 1980s of Mary dancing with members of the New York City Police Department and Jacques d'Amboise. Jacques was a principal dancer of the New York City Ballet and George Balanchine's favorite male dancer. So thank you all for coming.